some of you may know that Professor Stahr is also an air traffic controller, right? And talk about nerves of steel. You need them to be an air traffic controller.
Maybe hear the rest.
And I know of one other instance where he exhibited nerves of steel. Did you all know that for his CPA exam, Professor Stahr went to the wrong address? And by the time he found the right location, he was starting his test 45 minutes late. Was that right? 45 minutes late? And he still managed to pass it. So, pretty amazing, right? I think a lot of us So, again, those nerves of steel. Marines are strong. They're very strong. And I know there was a time in Professor Stahr's life when he had to be really strong when his first wife passed away, and he had to persevere through his own grief and continue working and being there for his daughter and his son, and be a strong dad for them. And so there's your dad mug.
Oh, thank you.
What does it say, Jim?
Being a dad isn't easy. Good thing it's fun. By the way, my youngest is here. I don't know if you got to meet him, but he's standing with his back against the pole.
I got the looks from the mother.
Where'd you get your strength?
Where'd you get your humor?
All right, so back to that CPA exam. We all know that that's obviously an indicator that Professor Stahr is very smart, and I can attest to this as well. But he's smart in a unique way. He's what I would call clever. And one story that sticks with me where he demonstrated his ability to be clever is he was telling me about some students who had cheated on a project. I believe it was an Excel project, and it was obvious that these students had colluded. We all know what collusion means today, right? They had obviously colluded and had produced the same work but claimed it was their own. And so what Professor Stahr did was call them all in and say, well, this project is worth 30 points. You tell me how you want the points allocated. And so what that did is I believe the ones that had really done the work fessed up because they knew they were entitled to the points. Is that the way it went?
Yeah, the ones that hadn't done it, the guy who had done the work didn't say anything, and the rest of them realized that they better give him the credit because he'd done the work.
Okay. So when I heard that story, it's always reminded me of the story in the Bible about King Solomon. Remember King Solomon? He prayed for wisdom, and one of the earliest manifestations of that wisdom was when the two women came to King Solomon, and they each claimed that the baby was theirs. Do you remember that story? And King Solomon said, bring me a sword, and he was going to hack that baby in two, right? And then the woman who was really the mother said, no, it's okay. The other woman can have the baby. And so that has always been what that story reminded me of, Professor Stahr. Solomon and the baby.
Mini keyboard.
Thank you.
Okay. Now I all know that Professor Stahr has a passion for hunting too, right? You can do too much damage with that one.
Can I try?
But it's not just Bambies. Not just Bambies that he gets out and hunts. I have seen him while he's been here at Judson hunt for students who needed a little bit of extra encouragement, shepherding. He was always on the hunt for students he could share his faith with, pour into, and really mentor them and put them in a better place. He and I used to joke about this, and we used to call it, do you remember what we always called it? Taking them
To the woodshed.
to the woodshed. Yes. So, No worries, there was no actual physical abuse going on. It was our code word, and every now and then I would have a student in one of my classes, and I would go to Professor Stahr and say, so-and-so needs to get taken to the woodshed. Can you take care of this? And really, what it was is we would see students now and then that we knew were just not performing up to their capabilities, and they needed somebody to step in and kind of, give them a good talking to, and he was just the guy to do that. And honestly, it did work miracles in some cases. We saw some students completely change themselves around, and they began to take school more seriously. I want to ask any hands if any of you got taken to the woodshed by Professor. That goes without saying. All right. Well, there's another side of Professor Stahr. I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but I have. Professor Stahr is very generous. He and his lovely wife Lisa have opened their home. They've been hospitable. They've been generous with their time and serving the Lord. And they've opened their home to students for a chili night and missionaries, I believe, that have visited, and just really been wonderful servants of the Lord, giving up their time and their resources. And I personally was a recipient of Professor Stahr's generosity. I started teaching here as an adjunct, and I very much wanted to come onto the faculty. But we had a hiring freeze in place. And Professor Stahr went to Dr. Jerry Kane, who was the president at the time, and he said, I will take a cut in load if you will bring her onto the faculty. And that's how my career at Judson started. I will always be grateful for that.
One of her for two of me, we would have been a lot better off.
Well, despite this tough Marine, I think the absolute most favorite thing about Professor Stahr, to me, the most touching thing, is that there's one thing that will melt this tough Marine like butter. Does anybody know what it is?
Great-grandchildren. Child.
Very good, close second. That's not what I'm thinking of, though.
Yeah.
Professor Stahr literally cannot talk about or think about the Word of God without choking up. And to me, that's the best piece of his legacy, because we should all feel that way about the Word of God. We should all be that humble before the Lord and recognize the gift that we have in His Word. And so, Professor Stahr, that will be the most touching thing that I remember about you always. So we want to thank you for your service to the university and to the business department, to the accounting program, to all these students that have come here, and countless others that weren't able to make it. And we want to wish you and Lisa just the happiest and healthiest of retirements. And as you start a new season of life, we wish you all the best.
Take off all the hats?
Yeah.
Professor Stahr asked me to say a few things, and I will be brief. I used to be in front of you all the time, every day, and now I'm looking out and I'm going, I haven't talked in front of anybody for a long time. So, a few things I'd like to share about our personal relationship. I started here at the same year that Jim started, and a lot of you that are newer would know that. And so we started together in about 2000, right? Yeah.
2000.
2000, yeah. And I didn't know at that time what good fortune I had befallen me. It's not often that you meet someone at work that becomes one of your best friends. See, I cry like he does when I talk. I think there are many would count Jim to be on their short list of best friends. And that's because he does the things that best friends do. And he's a person who's worthy of that title. He lifts up those around him with genuine concern and love. And he's a little old school in some areas.
I'm a lot old school.
A lot old school in some areas. But in the areas especially of how to be a friend. And I think that's really good old school thinking right there. So in the 15 years we worked together, we lifted each other up sometimes. I lifted him up. And we also had a lot of fun, from arm wrestling in my office to riding bikes for diabetes. And one that I didn't think about until today when I saw Mike. And this has got, I can't give you the whole story, but it's one of the most unusual things I've ever done. And there was a problem with the motorcycle dealership down where he had a lot of motorcycles on the showroom floor. And the gentleman was selling them but not giving Jim the money. That's a problem. If you're in business, you understand that. So we didn't do it in the dead of night, but we did it in broad daylight. We went in there and we rode all of his cycles out of the showroom floor off to another location. And I've never done anything like that before or since. And he called ahead to the police to let them know what was going on. So that was good thinking. So and the employees kind of knew what was going on too. So nobody gave us a hard time. It was very, very different. In case you haven't noticed, Jim could be a little competitive at times. If you told him, you know, I don't think you can do that, he most certainly would probably do that, or at least he would hurt himself trying, you know. And he's had to do some heavy lifting in his life, and he did it well, and with grace. His underlying strength has always been his faith in God and God's faithfulness to him. So I'm happy for the promise of heaven. I retired here from 4 years ago, so I'm 4 years closer to that. But for many reasons I'm happy about that. But finally having time to spend with my friend in heaven someday, that I'm excited about. All right, that's not it. But that's the hard part. All right, so the other thing, when Professor Stahr came, he had two goals, and that was to influence young men and women for Christ, and win them to Christ, and to prepare them for a career. And a lot of you know what that is. And so here's a letter from a student that most of you probably don't know, if you're students now, because he's been gone. And it was actually addressed to Dale Simmons at the time. He wrote this unsolicited, and it's worth sharing because I think it is iconic of the way that Jim influenced students. He said, I spent 3 semesters at Judson College, graduating in May of 2004. Although I spent a brief time at Judson, I met an individual who impacted my life probably more than anyone aside from my parents. During my time at Judson College, I had one class with Professor Stahr, but honestly, I think I learned more in that personal finance class than perhaps the rest of my college career, including my MBA studies at University of Nevada. When I met Professor Stahr, I was living a type of life that I would watch on MTV. Probably a little dated now, MTV. I guess I was spending too much money on material possessions, partying with friends, and whatever else struck my fancy. However, on my first day of class, Professor Stahr taught us about the rule of 72. Anybody know what the rule of 72 is? Yeah, you should know that, right? Which shows how quickly an investment value doubles with a given interest rate. That was the moment that Professor Stahr changed my life. Beginning with that class and throughout the rest of my time at Judson, Professor Stahr made me a better person. Rather than wasting what I had made or what I was given, I began to invest and to make charitable contributions. I also got my lifestyle under control. With the help of Professor Stahr, I found the Lord. Basically, my life changed completely. I tried to think of some quotation or analogy to describe Professor Stahr, but nothing really seemed to fit this former Marine other than Scepter 5. Professor Stahr is always faithful. He will never let down the school, the student, or the Lord. So I think there's many others that could have written letters similar to that as well, but that really says a lot about it. So, we have a little something now. Michelle said this was something from us, but this is really something for everybody. We just have a little bit more part in putting it together. Angie packed it, so it's well packed. And this is his favorite verse that we mounted, had written up and mounted. Now, you can say some words.
Should I say something?
You have to say something.
Prepared.
Put a few notes in there.
Put on the projector for the PowerPoint.
By the way, was that the guy's name Tim?
Tim, yes, I didn't mention his name, yes.
That's, we called it when he